Welcome to the Leadercast podcast, a weekly deep dive into the stories that transformed our guests into leaders worth following. I'm your host, Joe Boyd. If you've been enjoying the podcast, thank you so much for being a listener. One simple thing you can do to help us out is give a review wherever you listen. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Most of you are just listening to this podcast, but did you know you can also watch it on YouTube? And if you've been watching it on YouTube, you notice that our background changed. It's now white. And some of you wondered if it was a mistake, but no, it's supposed to be white because I pop more. All right, let's talk about today. Today's guest is Ryan Hawk. He is the host of the Learning Leader Show. Ryan's leadership story is awesome because he had a dream that didn't quite pan out, but now he's living a new dream. And promise me, stay to the end of this episode. He will talk about the 4 practices that every leader should have every day, and it really could make things better for you. Ryan Hawk, welcome to the Leadercast podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It's really good to be with you again, man.
I'm super excited for you to be here. We were only separated by like 60 miles, I think. But
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm just super appreciative for you, man, and your whole team for having me at your event in person. It's just so first class. It's really cool to see the behind the scenes and get to be a part of it and just see how you run the operation, man. It makes a lot of sense that you guys are doing so well.
Yeah, thanks, man. We loved having you. Ryan, for those of you who don't know, is one of the keynotes at our Super Teams event that came out recently. It's on the Leadercast 365 platform, along with some backstage interviews we were able to do with Ryan. And he killed it. It was awesome. I'm hearing great things. So if you're a member, if you're not a member, what are you doing? If you are, then jump over there and listen to or watch all Ryan's stuff on our platform. I want to use this time. We met briefly, but I don't know your full story really, and I just want to use this time to kind of get to know you and see how you got where you are and what dragons you had to slay to get here. That's kind of my thing. So.
I love it. Well, how far back do you want me to go, man?
Let's go for it. Let's go back. Let's go far back. I have a feeling you played sports growing up.
Yeah.
So what are your earliest sort of memories in terms of kind of, being a part of a team or leading something when you were a kid? What kind of kid were you?
Well, I mean, I'm very lucky to be born into a great family in Dayton, Ohio, and born and raised and with amazing parents, 2 brothers. And sports really was what kind of drove our lives. I would say our whole family, football, baseball, basketball in high school. I played at Centerville High School for the legendary Bob Gregg and Ron Ullery, 2 amazing coaches. And given my teammates and how good those coaches were, gave me the chance to play football in college on a scholarship, which made me feel good that my parents didn't have to cover that bill. But you talk about like one of the first points of big adversity for me. So I graduated high school. I committed to go to Miami University to hopefully be their quarterback. I was a firm believer that the quarterback of the offense they were installing would one day play in the NFL. I thought it would be able to you'd put up a lot of points, a lot of stats, win a lot of games. I was really huge, awesome recruiting class. The interesting thing about that, Joe, though, is another guy in that recruiting class happened to be really good. He played the same position as me, and that's Ben Roethlisberger. So Ben and I are exact same age, exact same class, and we came in together at Miami and battled it out for 2 seasons, 2 full years, every day, practice, weight room, film room, classroom, everywhere. And obviously, we know how that story goes. He outperformed me, played better than me. And I, had to sit there and be told by my head coach, Terry Hepner, the late, great Terry Hepner, that this guy gives us a better chance to win than you do. So you can either change positions or you can be okay accepting the role as a backup quarterback. And I opted for option C. I did not want either of those things. So I ended up, after 2 tough years that I loved everything about Miami, I ended up transferring to Ohio University, where in those days you had to only practice for a year, and then I was eligible to play for 2 seasons, which I then did. So that, Joe, I'd say was the first part of my life where I think it was very good for me to face some real adversity and to be told that somebody else is more valuable to our team than you because he gives us a better chance to win than you do. And I think that is a good thing for a young, punk, arrogant 19, 20-year-old kid to hear, who thinks he's really good. that's a really good thing to go through. So I think as hard as it was at the time, and as hard as how much I hated it, I think it'd be good for all kids to go through stuff like that, because it forces you to bounce back and to be resilient and to figure out a plan of action when it doesn't go your way.
Thanks for telling me that, man. Now, as a Bengals fan, then I can just dislike Roethlisberger just a little more now. So
he's
I'm
pretty
sure
good for the Steelers.
Dude.
He was pretty good for the Steelers. Yeah, it was funny that he then got drafted to a place close to home and stayed there his entire career and won some Super Bowls. It's wild how all this stuff works out, man.
Did you play quarterback at Ohio University?
Yeah, so I played there for 2 years then, and then it was an up and down career. Our teams weren't that good. I loved it. I had fun. It afforded me the opportunity to play after college. I played in the Arena League for a couple of years. I briefly was in the CFL in Canada, and then had some NFL workouts that it was very obvious, by the way, once I got those NFL workouts, that I was not going to make any of those teams.
Yeah.
But I did get a chance to play a little bit for professionally in the Arena League, which was just another great experience, much like a minor league baseball player, I would say, as far as pay and lifestyle was. But a cool thing to be able to do in your early to mid 20s, when you're still figuring things out. And that also, I moved down to Birmingham, Alabama, which was a culture shock for me, completely different, and another really a good thing for me to go down there by myself. I didn't know a single person, and then kind of earn respect and trust from my teammates and be elected captain and do okay down in Birmingham, which is just another really good experience in my life that I draw from.
One of the things that always interests me about we've had several athletes on here. We had Anthony Munoz on. He's a pretty good football player. But I don't know that we've ever had I haven't talked to anyone about being specifically a quarterback at a higher level. A lot of times we end up in positional leadership, but we haven't earned the kind of relational leadership yet. That's very common in like business world. As a quarterback through your career, did you struggle with that? Like when you came into Miami or OU or whatever, or the XFL or
it's actually started, I was in a fortunate position. I started as a freshman at Centerville High School. And that had never happened before, but I was very just really scared to let my teammates down. And so in a way, I think my entire freshman year, the only really leadership I exemplified was calling. We were in a no huddle offense, was calling the plays at the line of scrimmage and then executing what I was supposed to be doing, and then I mainly kept my mouth shut. I didn't do anything other than that. And I remember between my freshman and sophomore year, Coach Greg and Coach Allery sat me down and they said, "We understand you were this young freshman with all these 18-year-old guys, and you just kind of did your job. But now you have to find your voice." And I'll never forget that. You have to find your voice. You have to do more than just execute the offense. You have to do more than just run the plays and call the plays at the line of scrimmage. You're responsible for everybody on our offense, and eventually you're going to be responsible for everybody on our team. Wow. That's what great quarterbacks do. And so I grew into leadership with the help of excellent coaches who helped me find my voice. I still think it's a good idea, if you're the new guy, or especially the young guy in that case, to let your work do the talking for you initially, until you've kind of earned some of that by performing when the lights are really bright, in that case on Friday nights, by helping our team win games. And so instead of coming in immediately as like this loud, brash talker, my personality probably was helpful in that time, where I was just too scared to say anything. I was intimidated by those older guys. They were way bigger than me. I just didn't want to let them down. But then I got nudged and pushed. My older teammates who encouraged me. I got elected captain earlier, before my senior year, which was helpful too. And I think all of that helped me kind of grow into the understanding of what it means to lead, not just yourself, but then also try to lift the levels of other people. And I just had great training for that because of the other people around me.
And obviously, I mean, I'm sure you were hoping to be an NFL quarterback, but it also prepared you for what you ended up doing as a host of the Learning Leader show. So you probably thought you were learning how to lead at football, but you were learning to lead everywhere, right? Probably.
Well, I mean, partially I got hired when my football career was over. Basically, they retire you, when you're not good enough to keep playing. Mm-hmm. And that happened, and I got hired for a sales job by a family friend named Rex Caswell at LexisNexis here in Dayton. So came back home because I didn't really know what I was going to do. And Rex told me the day he hired me as a sales rep, you're going to be one of my managers one day because of the leadership skills you've gained on the football field. And to his credit, like he did everything he could to kind of help me transfer those skills from the field into the business world. And that's ultimately what happened, where I became now in that world, though, if you don't perform, you don't get promoted. So first you have to be excellent at that initial job as a sales professional, but did well at that, tried to take some of the work ethic I've gained from sports into that world. And then would just try to learn as much as I could from others on how to actually lead and manage and coach within the professional world, beyond sports. And part of that learning, which started later, was when I then launched my podcast, The Learning Leader Show, now almost 9 years ago, as a form of I'd already earned my MBA, but I wanted to earn like a leadership PhD. And I thought about actually going to just back to school. Yeah. But the podcast ended up becoming my own form of a leadership PhD program, where I got to still to this day, choose all of my professors, ask them what I'm most curious about, and try to learn from them, and then share it with others to learn along with me. And that's how kind of like it's changed my life and my whole career, because the community that's been built out of me seeking to create my own leadership PhD program.
Well, I love it, man. I love the humility built into your show. Even if you wake up some days and don't feel humble, I love that it's kind of built into it, that you're going to be a learner and that you started this to learn. It's just, it draws people in. I think it's a cool thing. And it's made me, I recently started listening to some episodes just the last year since we met. And it's I don't know. It's more than, to me, it's more than just like a marketing angle, right? It's a great way to posture yourself, not as the expert, but as the learner. I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely, there was no, at the beginning of when I launched it, it was just purely my own curiosity project to learn for myself. And so there was nothing, I mean, I had a real job. I had a full-time job. Right. I didn't leave that I did it for 3 years on the side. It was purely out of joy and obsession and curiosity to learn, to try to be better at my job. And I think it did. I think it helped me. I didn't expect it to build this community that created a business that leads to speaking and consulting and advising with companies and running leadership circles and all the things that we've built since it started. But yeah, it wasn't really about anything other than just following my own curiosity and obsessions with great rigor. And by doing that, that's led to a lot of meeting people like you, right? Meeting really cool people and creating really neat opportunities. And so that's like kind of the advice I try to give to others is, if you like really give everything you got to following what you're deeply curious about, like who knows?
So one of the themes, I heard it in your story twice already, actually, that I've only done this podcast for a year, and we've done over 100 podcasts, but I've probably only hosted 30 or 40. I've lost track, but you've done way more than me of that. But already I see these themes of leaders that keep popping up. And one I don't think I would have expected, but kind of makes sense, is how one sentence from one person can transform your whole life story. And a lot of times it's not even people they know. Like, a lot of people tell me they just ran into somebody on the street, or somebody they worked with for 3 weeks said something, and it just shapes them. And that sort of influence, you mentioned it with your high school coaches when they said you're going to lead this team. A lot of times it's like speaking into someone what they're going to be. And then you said it at LexisNexis. He said you're going to be a manager or whatever, a leader here. I'm curious first, have you noticed that theme in the folks you've interviewed, that just kind of the power of words? Does that come up a lot?
Absolutely. I think now, as we've ascended into leadership roles, and this, Joe, your words carry so much weight. You have a lot of power. And I think that is an awesome responsibility that we should be grateful for, and we should use it for good. When your words continue to carry more and more weight, I don't think it's like narcissistic to think about that. I actually think that is the servant leader way to think about the fact that my words now carry some weight. Let's use that power for good. Let's use it to pour into people. Let's use it to give them hope. Let's use it to give them belief. Let's use it to lift them up. I really thought a lot about trying to do that, as well as the people who have done it for me, that you may not, like, especially for people who are really humble, these learning leader types, they might not realize it or even think about it. Like, do you understand how powerful your words or your belief in somebody is? And so let's be cognizant of that, and let's use that to lift people up. Let's use that for good. And I think that's inspiring, man. Like, that's part of the juice for me is to be able to try to pour into people and see them like reach their potential and beyond, because that's what the great leaders have done for me. Like, I did not think I was good enough to play. And Coach Greg tells me, you're going to be our starting quarterback as a freshman. And I said, there is no way. And he said, yeah, you are. I'm telling you from practice and from what we do, you're going to do it. And like, I needed that. I didn't have that self-confidence. I didn't have that belief. I mean, what a gift. Now, I went out and fortunately it went well. But man, like, I don't think it happens without somebody who just uses that power for so much good, like the people that I've been lucky enough to have in my life.
Just so you know, I don't know how much you know my background. I have a biblical studies theology degree, and I went into ministry, and then from there took a big detour into comedy and with the Second City, and did improv forever in Vegas and LA and acting and all sorts of stuff. And then became an entrepreneur and lead a business. But it's interesting, those things that, like, football for you shaped me. The reason I brought that up is just so folks listening will know that what I actually studied in college, some of it was around sort of Hebrew literature and, what we would call like the Old Testament if you're a Christian. And this idea of blessing. So that's something that stayed with me. And I've noticed it's in other cultures too, but it's really lacking in ours. And so, except for #blessed, right? But the idea of a blessing originally, if you look in the Hebrew scriptures, was to speak into someone what they would become. And you see that through all these stories, but it was even less about, I guess, leadership and more about just being an elder, being an older person who had authority now because of, if nothing else, having made it this far, to be able to speak into younger folks and say, this is who you are, this is what you're going to become. And in many cultures, that is expected. We have these multi-generational relationships where ideally it could be your grandparents speaking into you, saying, you're this, you're going to become this. But there's many great things about our culture. One of the things that I think is lacking is that sort of built-in respect of elders and just having older people in your life that can say things to you. But you get to experience a little of that, I guess is my point. And to be intentional about it, you said it's not narcissistic unless you're doing it to feel good about yourself, right? Because it's your job. And the older we get as leaders or people, it becomes more and more important that we say these things, because we don't want to forget that when we were younger, someone had to say those things to us to get us to where we are.
Yeah, I think it's part of the awesome responsibility of leadership is to realize that power and to be always looking for opportunities to use it for good, to use it to help people, to use it to nudge people, to lift them up, to believe in them, and to make sure they know it. I mean, sometimes we just make assumptions, or we think like, oh, they already know it, I don't need to say it. It's like, no. My friend Garen Stokes always says, see it, say it, see it, say it, see it, say it. I'm like, yeah, you see it, you say it. And another buddy, Greg Murray, says compliments are for the living. And I agree. Like, don't wait till somebody's dead. Like, let's just tell them now. Like, so if you think something good about somebody, send them a text, give them a call, tell them in person, write them a note. Right. Bring others involved. Talk. We always say, like, in our household, we try to say, because the world is so gossipy and it can be negative at times, we want to spread positive gossip. So let's talk kindly behind people's backs.
I like that.
Let's make phone calls on behalf of somebody else to tell somebody how awesome someone is. Let's tell them directly, hey, I really appreciate that you did this thing. That was really awesome. It was really inspiring. Just want to make sure you know. Like, think about how good it feels to give a compliment. Doesn't it feel good, man? Like, I think it feels awesome to give a specific compliment to somebody, to say, you did this thing. It was really, really great. Thank you. And keep going, man. And it feels good to receive those too. So I think if we all thought about that more, where we see it and we said it and we realize that compliments are for the living, let's like keep like making that our default mode.
Yeah.
Things would just feel much better, I think.
I absolutely think so. And it's tied into gratitude, right? It's kind of a similar thing of just being able to say like, I see this in you and I'm grateful for it. And we know for sure scientifically that the more grateful you are, the better your life ends up being.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to, and by the last thing I'd say about that is it's okay to be confident when you see something in someone. I think a lot of times people kind of don't feel like I don't have the authority to tell you, like, I honestly believe about you, Ryan, that I know it feels like you've been doing this 9 years and that's probably a long time. I think you're at the very beginning of your influence. Like, honestly, I'm not just doing this as an example. I think 5-10 years from now, you're going to influence 100 times the people you're influencing now. I'm very excited for you for that. I'm honored to be your friend now, because who knows if you take my call in 10 years. So
no, man, thank you. I mean, I really appreciate that. It means a lot, especially coming from you. I really appreciate that.
But sometimes you just see that in people. And I mean, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have texted you that had we not been talking about this. So we all need to do that more, right? Because I think I could look at you and think, and you may look at me like, he's a pretty confident guy, probably doesn't need anything from me. And apart from delusional people that are too confident, most people are projecting more confidence than they have. And it feels so nice to just hear from someone like, I know you're convincing yourself every morning to be this confident, but you don't have to be. Like, you're doing great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the juice, man. I mean, that's why I got one yesterday from this Major League Baseball hitting coach. And he sends it out of the blue, and it said some really kind things about recent podcast episodes. And he even said at the part, like, you're probably too busy, you probably won't read this, but I just want to let you know. And he said some really nice things about some episodes. And I thought, like, I'm not too busy ever to read that stuff.
Right.
I mean, to see that it's having an impact on people, and that it's these people who are doing really great things in their own right, and that something you're doing is impacting them in a positive way, that's the juice.
Yeah.
Like that is to me, and I really value adding value to other people's lives. And so when people tell you that, I think it's helpful. Now, you also get criticism. You're going to have some of that too. Right. That's part of the deal. You can't just only get the good stuff. I realize that. But to me, like, seeing that the work that you do helps other people is a very gratifying feeling, and something that I think helps, like, from a motivation perspective, especially on the days when it's really tough, or when you're tired, or when you don't feel like it. Some of those notes of encouragement, I think, can be some good fuel.
We usually don't get such a clear practical step for listeners. So if you're commuting in today, as soon as you get to the office, like, shoot off a text or an email and tell someone that what you see in them, or call them right now. Pause the podcast and call them.
My friend Brooke Cups has Thankful Thursday, so he sends 3 texts every Thursday to people he's thankful for, and he's a basketball coach. He's a great guy, and they all do it. Their whole team does it, and I get them from him, and it's then spreads out. And it's crazy how sometimes you'll get a Thankful Thursday text, and then that will make you send a Thankful Thursday text, even though you don't like normally participate. And so you don't also know the ripple effect and how far and wide your leadership and you going first can spread by you doing it. That could probably elicit someone else doing it for somebody else. And so it may go well beyond just your initial reach out. It could go far, far beyond that. So whatever the system you put in place, I think if you see it, say it, right? If there's something like awesome about somebody, just tell them like, what's the downside? There's none.
Even if you're wrong, they'll still feel okay. Right.
Yeah. Just let them know, man. Give them the specific compliment. It's great.
So this kind of relates, and I want to kind of wrap up at least the first part of your story a little. At some moment, you keep saying they retired me, but I don't know if you had a sense that was coming early on or not. And I think my point is, like, you're doing great now. Look at you. You're doing great, but there has to be a point where you were like, what am I going to do now? Like, I had these dreams, or was it not that way? Did it just kind of, you got the sales job and you just kept going? And
I'll tell you, man, my senior day, we played University of Akron at OU. Both of my parents were there, which was rare because my brother AJ and I played at the same time at different schools. So my dad would go to whoever had the game farthest away. My mom would go to the game closest to our home. Okay. But they both came to my game because it was my last game. And that was kind of emotional for me because of the fact that like I didn't want one of them to skip his game, but I understood why they did it. So they're there and I'm bawling my eyes out before the game. I'm crying during the game. It was affecting me because the main reason why was because you feel your identity after today, at least I thought, because I did not think I was going to play beyond that day.
Yeah.
You think like your entire identity after in like 3 hours is gone forever.
Yeah.
That is just a looming large hole that is going to be like just gone. And so I couldn't handle it. I could not deal with the thought of not doing it. And so I think I dealt with that for a long time. That's probably why I kept trying to play.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the Kurt Warner story from the Arena League to the NFL to winning Super Bowls. So like that, every quarterback in that league thought we could be that guy. And so part of it was like, you don't let it go. But I don't regret not letting it go because you're 23.
Yeah.
You know, what the hell else are you going to do? You know, like why not like keep going for it? You can always go get a job, which I did. So yeah, I think what happens is it's such a big part of you that it just took some time.
Yeah.
That's really was my best friend, was time to keep giving it a go and eventually realize, okay, you know, this is not going to be my path. This is not going to be the thing that I do. It is time to move on. But it just took time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what healed it the most. Watching AJ play in the NFL actually, in a weird way, made it better. I got to go watch him play, and we just got to be excited as a family and do all these go to these cool stadiums and watch him play. Like, I thought like maybe it would be harder to watch. It wasn't. It was actually like made it better in some weird way because I still got to be kind of involved even though I wasn't on the field, but I was still in it like with him, through him, and that in a way probably helped me a little bit.
Thanks. I think I camped out there because my real like the best thing about sports overall, well, I shouldn't say the best thing. It's such a great metaphor and analogy for everything else you're going to go through in life, and it forces you to go through it young. Most of us were done at 17, but it still forces you to go through some of that stuff and believe that stakes are a little higher than they are until you get out of it and you're like, oh, it's just a game. But
that's for sure.
Believing those stakes are high prepares you for real high stakes stuff later, I think. It also prepares you to learn maybe things aren't always high stakes when you think they are. But there's a ton of people listening to this that are where you are in their career, where you were towards your last game at OU, you know, where they're like, I always thought this was going to work out, but it's just not working out. Or I started my own business and I can't pay people. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, it's just not working. Or it is working and I'm just kind of miserable and it's not a fit. I hear those stories all the time from folks. So that's kind of why I was asking, like, you know, and you said time helps you get through it, but it also sounds like just maybe in your story, just kind of taking what's next and accepting it. And at some point you have to kind of let it go to see what's next and have a kind of vision for the future.
Well,
right?
channeled the good things that I learned from my athletic career in the profession of selling. There are some similarities. That's why a lot of former athletes go into sales because it's competitive. Typically the harder workers do end up ranking higher on the stack rankings, making more money, getting promoted. Not always. The world's not fair or perfect, but there were enough similarities that I could channel the work ethic and the things that I learned. Kind of can be true for whether you're hosting a podcast and preparing like crazy or whatever. Just taking that same style of work and channeling into whatever you're doing, it served me well, and I learned that from a very early age, like I mentioned before. From Coach Greg and Coach Rollery, that's really, you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good reminder for all of us. That, you know, sometimes you wake up, you don't want to go to work, and sometimes you just need that sort of reminder that's showing up is the big thing. Showing up every day at your best. Hey, we're running out of time. Unfortunately, I do have one last thing I'd like to talk to you about because of the nature of your show, and this can just be stream of consciousness. There's no really right or wrong answer, but quickly, if I were to say, what are the three themes or the three biggest things that you've learned? Do you know about how many interviews you've done on your podcast? Well, how many episodes?
About 560.
560. That's not about. That's exact. If I could put all those in a machine and outchurn the top three things that people kind of the commonalities, I'm just curious in Leadercast world, we use the phrase "a leader worth following." So, off the top of your mind, there's probably 10 of them. But what are 3 that you would notice as you talk to people?
Okay. I don't know if I hit your number exactly, but I'll
fine.
stream of consciousness thing. So I think first and foremost, they're very thoughtful and reflective people. They don't just go meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting without stopping and thinking and reflecting. So they're very thoughtful and very reflective people. They may have a journaling practice. They may have some sort of practice that forces silence that makes them think. So thoughtful to me is a very, very high compliment to ever receive if somebody calls me that, because I've found that to be a common. I think that the second step of being thoughtful and reflective is that they are very intentional and they have a bias for action. So these people who do take the time to think and reflect, but they don't really mess around. They take action on what they're learning, right? They're willing to think, reflect, iterate, take action. Think, reflect, iterate, take action. I've mapped out my perfect day based on what I've learned from these 560 plus people, right? These people are like the perfect day of what a good leader does, right? They fuel their intake engine with great amount of learning. They read, right? They talk to mentors, they listen to podcasts, they fuel that intake engine with good, useful knowledge. Their content diet is rich, right? Second, they experiment with what they've learned. They don't just sit around and take notes and learn. Oh, no, they actually go do it. So they have a mind of an experimenter. I'm going to take what I've learned. I'm going to experiment. Third, as I mentioned before, they take a step back, they pause, they reflect, and they think, they analyze what worked, what didn't work, what should I keep doing, what should I stop doing, right? And they keep progressing. And then fourth, I think part of that perfect day of what good leaders do is they teach. I'm always pushing the leaders that I work with. I'll say, when is the next training that you're leading? When are you teaching next? Like something like that weird looks. You should always be as a leader in the mode of a teacher, because teaching is one of the greatest tools for learning. You put yourself in the position of being a teacher, whether you're giving a speech, you're meeting with a mentee, whatever, you're probably going to think about what you want to say in order to add value to that person's life. So, well, I got to do the prep work. I got to share with them what I've learned, which then clarifies my thinking, which makes me a better leader, a better speaker, a better communicator if I have more clear thinking. And then I'm also going to pour in and help other people by teaching them. So it's like I benefit and they benefit. It's really a win-win thing. So that's kind of like my stream of conscious, I guess, Joe, of how I would put like the combination of what good leaders do, what I try to do, and also like what a cool day is if I can hit each of those things.
Man, I love that. Was a perfect answer. I should have just asked it better. So just to recap, there were 4 your perfect day, right? There's 4 things. Can you just say
fuel the intake engine, experiment, like take action, reflect, think, and then teach it to somebody else.
Man, that's good. That's worth the price of this podcast, which is free, but still worth it, man. That's good stuff. Man, I really, really appreciate it. I hope we can continue to hang out in each other's lives and help each other along. I for sure know people want to connect with you, so it's probably not hard, but can you tell them how to find your podcast? And then I know you also have a book that came out, so let folks know about that too.
Sure. LearningLeader.com is where everything is found. My podcast is called The Learning Leader Show. So if you search for that in any podcast player, you'll hear it. But LearningLeader.com is a home for everything. I've written 2 books so far. Welcome to Management was my first one, and my second one's called The Pursuit of Excellence. So those are found wherever you buy books. I also did the audio for them if you prefer that style of reading books.
Thanks, Ryan. Ryan Hawk, you're awesome, man. Thanks for being on the podcast. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, man.